Welcome. You are listening to audio from the table. If you'd like to learn more about our community or donate to this ministry, please visit thetabletx.com.
Guys, that was great. Full warning, I probably will be crying. I was already tearing up, Michael. Stop it right now. That was I was prepared to cry, but not immediately after I was singing. Anyway. Okay, so as Michael said, I'm Eden. I'm 17 years old. I go to Allen High School. I'm a senior. Yay. So going to college. Thank you, Maggie. So, and if you haven't gathered yet, dun dun dun, I'm trans. Sorry, I'm a youth or pastor, quote unquote. I work with kids all the time. So this morning it was lots of, all the things that you need to keep kids engaged. So I need to turn that off a little bit. But if you've never gotten to speak with me, my friends would describe me as outgoing and spontaneous and funny. At least Maggie laughs at all my jokes, so I would consider that a win. My number one fan right there. Since hearing about Youth Sunday, I kind of knew I wanted to speak here. Like I said, I'm a Sunday school teacher, and I have been for a year, actually now this month. And it's been great. Like the slide says, I love my life, right? I get to work with kids all the time, and it is my absolute pride and joy. I love my kids so much. I call them my kids, by the way. I love my kids so much. And I think talking about Jesus and sharing something so meaningful to me makes me love my job even more. I can't describe a more perfect thing, at least for me, to get paid to do, and wake up every Sunday morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, guys, and work with children. They can be a lot, but I love them. I love them to death. But in the same breath, I'm struggling. I struggle to read my Bible. I struggle to make time for Jesus. I struggle with my queerness and my faith. I struggle with anxiety and pain, and I struggle to find joy. And right now, I'm going through it. So just for a little backstory, my mom, things are rocky with her right now. If you're in my life, personally, you probably know. But my mom has abused me verbally since I can remember. She made me feel like I was never good enough and that I was never loved. And I remember since I was really little, wanting and praying to have a new mom for Christmas. And I don't know any kid like that. It's before you even know the word abuse. You just know, I want a new mom for Christmas, and I didn't realize that it ran that deep. And so I also remember lying awake and thinking that if my own mom couldn't love me, then who could? The one person who's supposed to be there for you, the one person who's supposed to love you unconditionally. And I never had that. And now I'm 17 and in therapy. So fun fact, I've been in therapy since 4th grade. Therapy lovers? Yep, okay. So been in therapy since 4th grade. I don't know if any of y'all can beat that, but I will take it as a challenge. Tell me after. But who's in therapy since 4th grade? Me, apparently. And many people would think that would stop me from believing in God, and think thoughts like, why is God putting me through all of this? And why is a God that's so good just leaving me, I was really in the depths. And then in 9th grade, I got into a relationship that was toxic at best and then abusive at worst. They told me they loved me after a week of meeting me, okay? And my thought was, oh my gosh, someone finally loves me, right? What could go wrong? Maggie? What could go wrong, right? This is all fine and dandy. A lot. Spoiler alert, that relationship didn't go well. As you can see by the slides, or the first slide with me and my girlfriend. That relationship did not work. Because, and I want to be vulnerable and honest right now and real, but I don't want to trigger anyone, and I want to be careful and cautious with how I use my words right now. So I'm not going to go into details, but they used my hurt and pain that my mom instilled to me, and took advantage of me and manipulated me into sex. It took place every other day for months. And after getting out of that, it does take a toll on you if you've ever wanted to know. It really does. And when I thought finally a solution would be to go to the cops, when I went to the cops, they said that there wasn't enough proof, that there wasn't enough to prosecute on, that I said yes, and they can't prove that it was coercion. It was my word against theirs. And I was really lost, because I thought that this is the way out. This is the way to solve everything, and they'll fix it, and I'll feel so much better, and this will be the changing point. And it didn't. It failed me. And then if that isn't bad enough, one of the other worst parts, there's many, but one of the other worst parts was seeing them at school. So they were in the same subject during the same period in the classroom next door to me. And if you don't know anything about the Allen ISD, we have separate campuses. So it wasn't just like I could go a different way and they could go a different way and I could avoid them. This was we had to walk the exact same way. And that was not ideal. I was afraid to leave my classroom. It really interfered with my learning. I was afraid to go to the bathroom alone, which, I mean, I would think you shouldn't have to be, but I was. I was afraid of what they would do and what they would say, and this fear turned into anger really, really quickly, and really, really deep anger, really deep-seated anger. How can somebody do something so terrible and face no consequences and think that they did nothing wrong? And I heard in the back of my head that I needed to forgive this person, and I pushed it off. I know I made so many excuses, like I haven't healed yet, I haven't processed my trauma, like I'm just not in the right place. How can I forgive someone who has ruined my life and who isn't even sorry? And that voice kept telling me that forgiveness isn't a way, or isn't saying that the action is okay or acceptable, but it's a way for you to let go and let God carry your burden. So this is where I want to talk about, I actually sent Maggie a voice memo a little while ago. I was driving on the highway, and I just had this epiphany of this verse, and I was thinking about it, and I realized that maybe I had been taking it out of context. It's Matthew 11:29 through 30. It says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So I thought, and growing up, I don't even know if I was directly told, but it was kind of subliminal maybe, that this meant that I had to give all of my burdens to God, and he would take everything, and I would never have to think about it again. And if I'm worrying, that means I'm just not letting God take control enough, I just don't have enough faith, I need to just put more faith in him and just leave my burdens all to him, and I won't worry. And if I do it correct, I won't ever worry again. But God didn't say, I will take your yoke completely all by myself, and if you do it right, you'll never worry again. A yoke is for 2 oxen, that shares the load evenly. He didn't say that I will take away the pain, but he says that he will share in our pain. He tells us that he will meet us right where we are. He doesn't say my yoke is perfect and worryless. My yoke weighs nothing. He says it's light. This is where I started. And I let God share in my pain. God gives us rest when we give in and say, Jesus, I can't do this alone. And here's what I learned. God didn't put me on this earth to judge, but to love. And it's not my burden to condemn. I sat for a really long time having really deep thoughts about what I would do if I got a chance to have a conversation with them and for them to listen to me. And if I were to just talk and all they got to do was listen, what I would say. And I racked my brain and I thought. And what that made me realize is that that nothing I say or do will ever make them hurt like they made me hurt. Nothing. And I can tell them how they hurt me. I can tell them how it's impacted my life. I can tell them how it's impacted my relationships, my romantic ones, my friendships, my confidence, and it's not going to change what happened to me. And I can't get them to make them hurt like they made me hurt. And honestly, it's not my burden to carry. It's not my job to make them feel the hurt that they made me feel. And here I wrote, Jesus will bring justice and I will bring love. And that's all God ever asks me to do. He doesn't ask me for anything more than that, because I wanted to make this person understand what it was like to hurt. I wanted them to apologize, make reparations. A Zelle wouldn't hurt. But I can't force them to do any of that. And all I can do is love. And as hard as that is, that's the truth. I mean, I want to do so much more. I want to have things in my control. And it truly just is not. It truly isn't. And that's been one of the scariest and also most freeing things that has ever happened to me. Because it was such a hurdle to give love when all I wanted to do was hate, and it freed me. Jesus freed me. I truly started to have less anxiety when I saw them, and I had more inner peace. And this started a lot with just repeating that God is already on my side, that I don't have to fight for him to be on my side, that I'm already guarded by his love, and there's nothing that this person can do that can hurt me already than they already have. And I think I started also to pray for this person, because I know that things haven't been the easiest for them. And that's not a justification. It's just the truth. I mean, And this is also a person who is a child of God, and I struggled with that a lot. And this is a person that Jesus so willingly died for, and he didn't get on that cross and died just for me because I'm so awesome and he loves me so much, because he loves this person too. And despite what they did, Jesus doesn't love this person any less. And he loves this person so much that he died for them, and he'd do it over and over and over again. And this anger really controlled me, and by proxy, this person was able to control my emotions. By stepping into a shared space, I got upset and angry. I got upset and angry when I saw this person. In a way, being mad at them was them continuing to control me. And I felt like they were controlling my emotions. And they controlled whether or not I had a good day by just existing in the same space as me. But most of all, it really controlled my ability to live out the mission that Jesus has sent me on this earth for, and that's to love. And as hard as that can be sometimes. And God doesn't ask me to get this person to take accountability. That's not my burden to carry. That's something I don't have to worry about because Jesus has it covered, and all I have to do is love. And by learning to love, I no longer let them control my emotions, my anger, and my fear. And it's one of the most freeing things I've learned. Recently, I've been reading a book called Everybody Always, Becoming Love in a World Full of Setbacks and Difficult People by Bob Goff. It's a really good book, guys. So, and something that fundamentally changed how I view this person is explained so beautifully in this quote. It reads, "Are there people you should give wide berth to? You bet. There are people in my life and yours who are unsafe, toxic, and delight in sowing discord wherever they go. God gave us discernment, and we should use it as we live our lives." And then it goes on to say, he's also given us love and understanding and kindness and the ability to forgive, which we have power we so often leave untapped. There's a difference between good judgment and living in judgment. The trick is to use lots of the first and go a little lighter on the second. I felt like I was living in judgment, and that's not a healthy place for me to be. And in case you want to take a picture of the title, because that's just chapter 1, guys. That's chapter 1. So it gets really good, okay? But Everybody Always, Bob Goff. Anyway, so I'm a firm believer that Jesus calls us to do the uncomfortable, and this is a phrase that I've been going back to again and again and again, and I know I've been really struggling with this, but also like when I knew that Youth Sunday was going to be open, I was like, I need to tell everyone that Jesus calls us to do the uncomfortable, because people stay in their comfort zone so often, and that's not what makes us grow. And Jesus knows us, and he knows that, and so he calls us out of our comfort zones onto the water, and that is how we learn what faith is. So fast forward to my faith growing, and I can't tell you how it happened. I know that you can look in the face of evil and it gives you a story, and you face things that are unspeakable, and they either tear you away from or drive you closer to God. And I thank God every day that it did not tear me away from him, but in fact led me closer. Joseph looked into the face of evil, and he forgave his brothers. And that's what we've been talking about in youth. It's all about perspective. In my perspective, this is a person who has hurt me beyond repair. And yet what God sees, and yet when we see through the eyes of God, God sees a person who he has laid his life down for. And like I said, that's one of the things that I've struggled with the most. But it's also been really freeing too. What this person intended for evil has been one of the greatest lessons in my life. And I'm not saying that it was good or that I'm grateful for my sexual assault or that it was a great thing. Or even that if something similar like this happened to you, that you should already be over it and be on the same timeline as me. But I'm saying that there is a perspective that God has taught me. Genesis 50:20, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. A phrase that I followed this by is not God ordained, but God transformed. Similar to what we were talking about a few weeks ago. And so I know there's probably someone here, maybe multiple people here, that thinks, oh my gosh, this Eden guy is crazy. And everyone in youth would kind of tell you, yeah, it's kind of a resounding yes on that front. But in all seriousness, I never, ever, ever thought I would be right here saying this, that I forgave this person. I think it was about a year ago now that I burst into tears and left the room when we were in youth. It wasn't that we were talking about something wrong or graphic or anything like that. It was that I could not imagine what forgiveness looked like. I didn't even want to think about forgiveness. I didn't think it was possible. And yet God makes all things possible. And it didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. And I know that there's probably, statistically speaking, there's a person in this room who has gone through something similar. And I just want to take time and space to say that I'm sorry and that it's not your fault. Sorry. It's not your fault. And it was such a hard thing to do at first, to think that the same God who unconditionally loves you loves this person who did evil to you. And yet it's one of the most beautiful, strengthening, and empowering things I've ever done. But I can't take all the credit for it. And one of the most beautiful parts about it is community. I opened talking about my mom, and things are still really rough on that front. My parents are getting divorced, and it's getting really nasty. I had to move out because my mom moved in, and guess who I found with an open door, open heart, and open arms? Carrie and Garen. Carrie and Garen. Karen and Gary. I'm sorry. I hope you enjoy the pictures up there. The other one is, the one of Karen is courtesy of Matthew Minor, and so is the one of Gary, but I was there. They let me stay in their house, and they were planning on long-term arrangements until a miracle happened, and my mom moved out. We did family therapy for a while, and I guess you can figure out how that went based on the fact that my parents are not together anymore. I knew I was going to cry at this part too. One of the only things that got me through those 60 minutes was knowing that I could go over to the Minor's house after and get a hug from Karen. And that's been so reassuring to me that I always have a place to go. I love you so much if that isn't apparent. Seriously, if you've never gotten a hug from Karen Miner, you're missing out. Listening ears, open hearts, and ice cream was something I got on the daily, on the regular, and at the Miners. And I mean, Karen posted me for a National Sons Day, and I may or may not have cried. I never thought that I would have a mom who loved me. And I have so many right here in this room. And, who gave me family dinners every week because I didn't feel like I had a family. Maggie, I hope you guys like these pictures too. She was not a fan of these slides when I showed them to her. But thank you for staying so long on your Maggie slide. It really brings me joy. Oh, there we go. Okay, and Mindy and Brett and Josh and their family. I hope you also like that picture of Eve. I think it's really great. Did you know that they have 7 kids living under one roof? Guys, I love kids, but 7? That's soccer and volleyball practice. That's piano lessons and vending machine commitments. And yet they made time for me almost every week in their home without hesitation. Maggie and I tend to have the best conversations that flow so naturally, and allow me to be so vulnerable in a way that I just wouldn't get talking to another 17-year-old, or anybody for that matter. I often struggle to leave, and it's common for me to miss my curfew because Maggie and I will lose track of time, or I will be trying to leave for up to an hour and keep getting reeled into another deep and beautiful conversation that I have so much input for. Yeah, my dad is not a big fan of the missing curfew part. And then Abby, Michael, and Marissa, they have been dedicated. They've been dedicated at youth to making a safe space. And I look up to them in so many ways. Abby always finds words of empathy and wisdom to share, and she gives us space and time to give our own thoughts, which, it can be so easy to feel overlooked as a teenager, and my opinion doesn't matter, and I've never felt that in youth. Along with picking out fun games that I've laughed so hard at, and so has Eve. Sometimes so hard she pees herself. We've gotten used to it a little. Michael's going, no. Michael brings their talent on guitar. His voice cracks and my underpitched harmonies never seem to get old. I truly feel so close to God, and I can tell this person is going places. I want to be like them in so many ways. Marissa is such a sweetheart, and she's one of the most humble people I've ever met. You're probably shying away in the corner, don't look at me, guys. She's so humble, and she's here almost every single Sunday, often the first to enter, setting up on her hands and knees to Velcro down cables, and always the last to leave at youth. She has stayed for up to an hour after youth, watching me and Matthew talk in the car, making sure we're safe. Guys, that's 9 p.m. for you guys. So from 2 to 9. So truly a mama bear. Matthew? Yeah, thank you for these pictures. Matthew is truly my best friend. We've spent hours upon hours upon hours sitting in his car and talking. Many times tears were included and at this point expected. Always taking time for me with his busy schedule treating me like a brother in the best ways and in the bullying ways. He will be so exhausted and will listen to me with an open heart. This church is truly the hands and feet of Jesus Christ. I never thought I'd have a loving family, and here they are, all around me. I have no doubts of how precious I am, and I'm loved so much. And that's not an assurance that you often get with a teenager in the 21st century, let alone someone who's trans. And I could not ask for a better support system while going through the worst patches in my life. All these people who invite me into their homes, their family events, their lives, and their hearts. This church has truly changed my life, and I don't know where I would be without them. And I don't say that lightly. I haven't even gotten to the affirming part yet, and I don't think I have time. But on top of this, they are one of the most affirming people, group of people that I've ever met, ready to share their heart and love for God, and unconditional love. Shiloh, I want to give a special shout out to, is Mindy's 6-year-old who always uses he, him pronouns for me whenever I go over and has never messed up. And something about that has healed me so much. The table has healed so much of my church hurt from being a queer kid growing up in a non-affirming space. What a blessing, truly. I get to look into the eyes of all of these people and see Jesus in each and every one of them. It's truly an unspeakable gift that I have no words to express my gratitude. Something about being in a queer affirming church when you didn't think that something like this could even exist changes you. God put us all on this earth to love the people that are easy to love and to love the people who are hard to love. And I think the greatest thing I've seen at the table is this. Jesus calls us to do the uncomfortable. Jesus calls us to love further than we want to sometimes. And I think that's what I've seen with the table. It's vulnerable to let someone in to have family dinners with you every week. It's vulnerable to let someone live with you. It's vulnerable to be in a queer affirming space and to share love. And that's exactly what Jesus has taught me to do, and the table has lived out.